Ever since the A7 III had been announced, I've been really excited about this camera. Not so much because I was specifically looking for a new camera, but more just in general because of all the hype around it. And I just wanted to see myself whether this camera can live up to it. By the way, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tom Streller. I'm a filmmaker, and on this channel I cover everything filmmaking related. So if you're into this, make sure to subscribe to not miss any upcoming videos. I guarantee you won't regret it. Now, over the last few weeks I got a brand new SONY A7 III here to test it out. And since I still have my A6300 as my daily workhorse, nothing made more sense than to compare both of these cameras. Especially since the A6300 is still a great camera for me and does everything I needed to do, even though it is 2.5 years old. So I put the A7 III to the test and compared it to my own camera. But to be clear, this is not a scientific test and I am not an expert by any means. This is just my personal opinion about how these cameras perform in my workflow. Now, first of all, let's talk about the build of the camera body. Because of course, this is definitely a big step from the A6300. The body is bigger and feels just way better and more premium. And also the grip has been improved, so now it fits just perfectly in my hand and is really comfortable to hold and work with. The size of the A6300 is actually the reason I got myself a small rig cage right away, since this gets the camera body to around the size of the A7 III. The overall layout of the camera is also just way better than on probably all previous Sony mirrorless cameras. The record button is finally where it always should have been, and all the customizable buttons and dials make the camera a real beast, since you can set almost everything to how you want. And even though the A6300 also has a bunch of custom buttons and dials, the A7 III just takes this to a whole new level. The screen has also been improved, but it's still not a swivel screen, and comparing it for instance to a Canon camera, it's just not a good screen. It's not bigger, but a little bit better than the one on my A6300, a bit brighter and capable of touch control. But I even turned off touch since I don't really use it, and essentially the screens are still not what's good about Sony mirrorless cameras. The A7 III though has a few more ports than the A6300. Most important, the headphone jack, which is really convenient, and it also features 2 SD card slots for endless shooting days. But one thing that's finally been improved is the battery life. This new battery, which is around twice as big as the older Sony batteries, is just amazing. You can shoot around one day with this, so it's finally a reliable battery, and this is probably the most important improvement to me because I really hated the battery life on the Sony cameras, especially after switching from Panasonic. So finally, no more 1 hour of battery life, no more carrying 12 batteries for one day of shooting. Thanks Sony. But now let's get into the actual workflow. So we all know that the Sony camera menus are not the best. They are actually pretty bad. I don't know what's wrong with them, it's just that they are super confusing with a lot of strange names and abbreviations. And again, if you compare the Sony menu to Canon for instance, it's just horrible. Even after working with the A6300 for quite a while now, I sometimes still find myself lost in the menu. That's been improved a bit to be fair, but as with the screen, it's just still not there yet. So I still hope that one day Sony will just redesign their entire menu system. What has been improved a lot is the speed of the camera in many ways, since the A7 III is just way faster than my old A6300. The camera starts really fast, writes really fast, and also the whole menu feels just way snappier. This is something I really appreciate, since it's sometimes a bit frustrating with the A6300 when you have to wait again for the camera to even start or change from video to photo. All this is really fast on the A7 III, and the whole working experience is just a breeze. One feature I really liked about the A7 III is of course the in-body image stabilization. This is just really useful, especially since I shoot a lot handheld, and even though a lot of people say that the IBIS of this camera is still far away from the IBIS of the GH5 for instance, I can say that coming from the A6300 with no IBIS at all, it's really fun to shoot with. It doesn't help you all the time, but for some quick handheld shots, it's really great to have. Now to test out some actual footage coming from the A7 III and to compare it to my A6300, I took both cameras to the butterfly house in my hometown and got a few shots to look at the footage side by side and see if there's actually a big difference. For the test I used the Tamron 24 to 70mm 2.8 on the A7 III, a lens that on full frame comes really close to the look of my Sigma 18-35 on an APS-C camera. So first let's take a look at your regular 1080p in 24 frames per second, no picture profile. Now let's see how this looks in 4K. And let's scale it up to 100%. So I want to be honest with you guys, I'm really not that much into the technical aspect of filmmaking and cameras. So in general I would say that both cameras produce really good image quality. The A7 III though seems to have slightly more dynamic range, at least it seems to me that there are more details in the shadows compared to the A6300 footage. And of course the A7 III will give you that nice full frame look with a beautiful depth of field. When filming in 120 frames per second though for ultra slow motion, there is a difference you can easily see. The footage of the A6300 is definitely way softer. Of course, the A7 III missed focusing on the waterfall a bit, but in the focus area you can easily see that the A6300 footage just in general seems a bit mushy. You can only really see it when you upscale your 1080p footage, but the difference is still there. But in general the colors are pretty much the same and look really good to me. Especially with no picture profile, you could really use these clips straight out of camera. Since the colors are saturated but not too flashy, so they seem pretty natural to me. But of course, since I mentioned the A7 III's in-body stabilization before, let's see how some handheld shots from both cameras turn out. Yeah, no surprise here. The A7 III just kills the A6300 since the handheld footage looks so buttery smooth this way. That is a feature that could really turn me to the A7 III. Now some of you are probably wondering why I didn't talk about the autofocus of both cameras. Well, simply because I think that the Sony autofocus is one of the best, especially for shooting videos, but it all comes down to your lens. You can get amazingly precise autofocus on the A6300 with a native Sony lens, good autofocus with, for instance, a Sigma art lens and an MC11 adapter, and horrible autofocus with some other third-party lenses. And the same goes for the A7 III. With my Sigma art 24mm f1.4, it's been just amazing to shoot with photo and video. So if you're about to get a new Sony mirrorless camera, don't worry about the autofocus, because it's just great if you got the right lens. Now here are my final thoughts after this test. Of course the A7 III is overall a better camera. It's by far not perfect, but you should always keep in mind that there's no perfect camera out there. Every camera has some drawbacks and it's mostly about what camera fits you the best. And for me that's the case with Sony cameras in general. I just love their features and how they are really easy to customize. So they are perfect for my workflow. And the A7 III is no exception. I love it, and if you're in the market for a new Sony mirrorless camera, make sure to give the A7 III a try, since you get a lot of bang for your buck. But now you're probably wondering whether I will make the switch to the A7 III. Well, my friends, that's something I'm going to talk about in the next video. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more filmmaking related videos like this one. And I hope to see you guys in the next video.